Next, we have a prodigy amongst us. He is simple in character, but brilliant in imagination and flawless in calculation. A person who taught India that there is more to sport than just cricket. A person synonymous with chess.
He is India's first international grandmaster, former world chess champion, and the best rapid chess player of his generation. He has inspired an entire country of billions to take up the sport. We now invite Mr. Vishwanathan Anand to the stage, please.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to share four, let's call them moments of my career, or four experiences in my career that I think you might be able to relate to. The first was in 1985. So I had just become an international master. For those of you not familiar with titles, we have international master, and then the big one, which is a grandmaster. There is no title above grandmaster. Above that, you only can become a world champion or something like that. So I'd become an international master, and then the obvious next stage was to try to become a grandmaster. The thing is, at that point in India, there were no grandmasters. So it was, we viewed a grandmaster title in those days in the same way that we view an Olympic gold medal nowadays, as something that's a little bit out of reach. And it was quite a big thing, because every conversation I would have with anyone, if it came to, what do you do? I'm a chess player. Why don't we have any grandmasters? And it was a big thing. Of course, now we can laugh about it because India has just got its 50th grandmaster. But in those days, it was a huge psychological barrier as well. So it wasn't just the title. It wasn't just the formal question of ticking the technical requirements to complete your title. It was a kind of psychological barrier. You felt that those who were grandmasters were just better than you in some intrinsic way. We all had these funny stories. We felt anyone with a Russian-sounding name was better than you, and that sort of thing. So, in 85, I started to look towards this. And of course, there were a group of 4 or 5 international masters in India, all of whom were realizing that we were rivals to become the first. Because there's something special about becoming the first, right? The problem was, we had no role models to follow because we were all trailblazers in a way, trying to do it. So the prize was huge. Obviously, if you're the first, you're going to be the first in history. And that can never change. And so I started going. And you think these things happen in steady arcs. You get better, and then you do a better job, and then you do a better job. But in fact, the closest I came was in the very first tournament. So the first tournament where I started to try to become a grandmaster, I missed the grandmaster performance by half a point. So that's the bare minimum. On the one hand, disappointing, but on the other hand, you feel I'm very close. So this should be a piece of cake. In fact, it would be 2 long years of this. So I would go from tournament to tournament. And then I would miss it by a point, then a point and a half, then a point. It was very uneven progress. And then you would have a really bad result where you're nowhere close. And then the next tournament, you'll come back close. And this was happening over and over. And by mid-1986, I started to feel I'm not really getting close. This last half a point is different from all the other points. There's something extra there. So I was really fretting as to how to get better and cross this, because it seemed that whenever I improved one area, some other area gave way. So I would fix one weakness, but then something else would show up. and things like that. I had a conversation with an international arbiter called Stuart Rubin, who, due to his age, he had seen many, many youngsters become grandmasters, and so he knew this path well. We were talking, and he told me, you shouldn't keep thinking of this half point. When you finally become a grandmaster, you'll probably overshoot. And he said that's how it was for many cases. You don't just barely make it. If you just let your chess improve and you let it go, if you happen to become strong enough, you will just cross it easily. And that was nice, so I kept that thought in my head. Then again, I had 2-3 tournaments like this, missing. And then I had to study for my +2 exams. So in December, I decided, okay, I'm going to stop playing chess now. I stopped cold turkey. Just 3 months, I was going to catch up. So catch up everything I'd missed from, let's say, June till December, and finish my +2 exams, and then I could think about trying for the title again. And this was, looking back, this was incredibly helpful, because those 3, when you keep on doing something, it gets very repetitive. You can't try new things, and somehow you're always trying to tweak what you did before a little bit and see if it gets better. But it was nice to let go. For 3 months, I couldn't do any work on chess. I had to focus on my exams. And so when I finished my exams, and then again in April, I was starting to think of what tournaments I could play. I really felt enthusiastic about chess again. I really wanted to play chess again, because after 3 months of studies, I was sick of that. Equally, of course, you can imagine my classmates when I'm complaining that 3 months of studies was too much, but that's another story. But equally, when I went back to school in Jan, I was probably the most enthusiastic student, because I was really looking forward to studying. So in '87 April, I started looking for tournaments again, and I tried to play everywhere. In fact, my results did not get better for a while. And then I had probably one of my worst results in that stage as a junior. And then right away, I went to the World Junior Championship in the Philippines. And I won this. And I was not only the first Indian to win the World Junior Championship, I was the first Asian to win the first World Junior Championship. So that was, thank you. So that was a big boost, because you need this confidence again. We can talk all you want about motivation, but sometimes just a win is the best feedback you can get. Of course, it's very nice when you've undergone a period of suffering before you get it, but still you must get it. So for me, this World Junior was just a fantastic result. But the positive thing was, it was opening a lot of doors for me as well. As World Junior Champion, and as the first Asian World Junior Champion, all sorts of tournaments open their doors to you, and you get invitations to very prestigious events. So the possibilities are becoming very interesting. I missed my Grandmaster norm again by half a point in my next tournament in October. And then in December, there were 2 tournaments, one after the other, actually in Delhi and in Coimbatore. And in both of them, I overshot the norm, just like he had predicted. In the first one, there was no pressure in the last round. All I had to do was to make a draw, and I did that comfortably. And the second one, in fact, I had finished my Grandmaster title 1 round before the end. So this was the first big moment of my career, and combined with the World Junior Championship, it was very, very exciting for me, because now I was getting invited to tournaments that I would have needed a much higher rating to get to, because first Indian Grandmaster, first Asian World Junior Champion, there was some extra cachet to it. At the first 6 months, I couldn't play chess at all after I became a Grandmaster. So in every tournament, I underperformed. And it didn't even seem to matter what a Grandmaster norm was. I was missing it by a lot. So after overshooting it effortlessly, I'd fallen back quite a bit. And then, you speak to your colleagues and they tell you experiences from their own careers. And they all said the same thing. They said, yeah, after 6 months after becoming a grandmaster, we couldn't play chess at all. And it's this thing. So you see, when I was trying to become a grandmaster, all I had to do was to get to a tournament, and I knew the score I had to do. So it was, usually the grandmaster title is just a percentage of the thing. So you have to score 75% or 72% or 69%, whatever, depending on the strength of the event. So as soon as I got to a tournament, I knew what was the score I had to make. And this gave a nice fixed target, like a peloton gives a cyclist, something to aim for. And once you become a grandmaster, it's like a doctorate, it's a title you keep for life. Once you become a grandmaster, there's no pressure at all. You can finish above the GM norm, you can finish below, nothing really happens. And so very soon I lost focus completely, and this effect is quite strong. The other problem is you have this feeling you achieved something, but you don't know what to do with your life next. It's funny that this has such a big effect, because if you think if your technical abilities in chess are a certain level, then you should be able to perform. But it's amazing how much this is influenced by having a goal in front of you. Anyway, after 6 months, it passes for most people, and it passed for me as well. I started to look at new goals. My next aim was to qualify for the World Championship and to try for that. And once you sort of recalibrate yourself, things started to move normally again. So I started to climb in the rankings again. It still took me a further 3 years of practice to get my ranking to the top 20 in the world. And then the qualification started. I qualified for the last 16 of the World Championship, and then I started playing the matches. In the first cycle, I won my first match, and then right away I was paired with Karpov. So I was going up and he was coming down. So he had dropped from a challenger to trying to qualify again to be a challenger. And this meant that we met when he was probably still in his peak, in a sense. I lost to him, but it was a very, very good experience, because working against someone to play someone so much stronger than you gives you a lot of freedom to experiment. And it was very, very good experience. In fact, the work I did for that match sustained me for the next 3 years, because I didn't need to do much work anymore. I'd done so much work just to get ready for Karpov that I could live off all the unused work for a while. It took me a further 3 attempts to become world champion. So the 93 cycle I missed again, the 95 cycle I missed, 98 I missed, and then finally in 2000 I became world champion. It was very similar to the Grandmaster title, in that there has to come this moment when you stop thinking of how am I going to do this, how am I going to do that. You stop focusing on the points, and you just play chess because you've been through everything enough times that you know roughly what has to be done, and you don't need to try to mentally talk yourself into getting a goal. Most of the goals I've achieved, they don't happen when I'm talking to myself or I'm guiding myself. It happens automatically. So you play well, and you know intuitively what you're supposed to do next. So I became world champion in the end of 2000. And again, though it doesn't happen that way for everyone, when I finally did it, I did it easily. A 6-game match I finished in 4 games, and I had the feeling that it was the most relaxed stroll past the finish line, almost. So after again many misses, it just happened, and this meant that it was better to just let your strength and your understanding of chess expand, and one day, if you're strong enough, it'll just happen. So again, the same thing happened as after I became a grandmaster, but with a delayed effect. I mean, I roughly remembered what had happened to me as a grandmaster, so I tried to set some new goals and things like that. But there's one thing when you do it with full sincerity, there's another thing when you're just ticking a box. So I tried to set myself some new goals, but you can't fight the feeling of satisfaction that you have. So deep down, I was very satisfied that I became world champion, and these new goals I was setting for myself, I don't know whom I was kidding. So they were not very convincing, and after a couple of good results, I had, in fact, the worst result of my career, and probably still is the worst result of my career, though I've had a few bad ones after that. This was in Dortmund, and this was a very interesting experience, because what had happened was, after I'd become world champion, I had 3 good events. There was a sense of discomfort where I could feel that my play was suffering. I mean, many days I would come back after a good result and I would feel very uncomfortable. I had done many things badly and I needed a lot of luck to come through. Or you take 20 moves to win an endgame, you could have won in 5 moves, or this sort of thing. And I had the feeling that something was wrong, but I thought, well, my results are still good, so I probably shouldn't worry too much. I mean, if you start worrying too much also, it's a bad thing. So you always try to find this balance between being self-aware and understanding what you're doing wrong, being objective, but at the same time not overreacting to everything. But it's hard to get this balance right. I tried not to panic too much, and I had this idea that, okay, I will play this tournament in Dortmund now, and after that I have 2 months free, and those 2 months I'm going to sit and try to fix these problems, but I need to get through this tournament alive. So when I got to this tournament, it was one of the strongest events held until that point. I was not very ambitious because I could see that I lacked a lot of resources, but I set myself a very modest goal. I thought I will try to finish in the middle of the pack. Not a very ambitious goal, obviously, but I felt it was realistic and could be achieved. And so it went. I got into the tournament steadily, defended a couple of bad positions, and then suddenly one bad position, though in my better days I would have held it easily, this one slipped away. Bit of a setback, but still I could continue the tournament, so I kept doing this. And then at the very end, my tournament wasn't getting better. I wasn't winning any games. I was only drawing them. So you could feel the effort level drop, the intensity level drop, because every morning you're not very enthusiastic to go and play, but you were just trying to do your job. I did that, and then I lost the 8th round and the 9th round, and so there was just a 10th game left. That I drew very quickly, and this meant that I'd actually finished last. So these last 2 losses had pushed me to the bottom, and that was a big shock. What amazed me was not even that I couldn't perform, I couldn't attain some great goal. I couldn't even attain the goal that I'd set for myself, which was quite a very low bar. And even that I missed by a wide margin. It's very hard to settle for a very low bar. In the same way as that when you're running in a treadmill, if you try to slow it down, sometimes you'll slip off the belt. It's that kind of thing. It's very hard to drop these things. So I concluded a few lessons. Obviously, my first reaction for 2-3 weeks was to not look at a chessboard and not go anywhere near a chess magazine or anything. There was still the pain of this event. And because it had been long drawn out, day after day after day, it took maybe a couple of weeks before I could feel normal again. But then the first question was, how should I go forward? So I understood a lot of the mistakes that I had made. I had not kept working on many areas. And things had changed in the meantime. So the things that I was doing extremely well just 6 months before were suddenly neutralized. My opponents were not losing those games to me, and I had not found anything new with which to challenge them. So then I kind of overreacted. I would spend a few weeks experimenting in every tournament I could play. Just wild, uncoordinated experiments. I would try something new. It wouldn't work out because I had not built up the expertise. Then I would try something else. I really tried many things, but it wasn't enough. I lost my world title, the one that I'd won the previous year. I didn't defend it. And so 2001 just kind of ended with everything shut down. So the next year the question was what I should do. What should I even aim for? It seemed a bit strange to aim for the World Championship because I understood I had fallen very far behind, and the priority was to get my chess on a normal footing again. I played a tournament in April in Prague, and this was a very, very strong knockout event. So there were 32 players, and these were literally, with a few exceptions, the top 26 or 27 in the world, plus some local players. And so when I went there, I tried not to have any goals whatsoever because it'd been like 6-7 months of frustration. If that sounds like making a low bar, I can't tell you what the difference is, but this time I felt I just wanted to play 1 or 2 good games. So it was very, very basic. I wanted to play a good game of chess and simply have the feeling of playing a good game of chess, nothing more. And I think that was the difference. It's a different thing when you say, well, I will settle for this. But here I was very keen just to have 1 good game and then maybe 1 more. I wanted to play something that gave me some creative satisfaction again. So I tried to do that. And in fact, I won the tournament. And that was a big relief because everyone, once in a while, when you lose your confidence, it's impossible to do anything. You see, in chess, like in most other things, there is what you know and there's what you don't know. What you know tends to be stuff that what a lot of people know, so there's nothing that differentiates you. Where you make a difference is how you deal with unknown things. And if you don't have confidence, then you're always making bad decisions there. So it's important to feel this confidence, or at least this freedom to play and experiment and take risks. Confidence and risk-taking are connected. If you don't have one, you don't have the other. And if you're never taking risks, you're never going to win a game. I mean, you'll draw, you'll do average, but you will never get forward. So I needed this good result again, just to feel like I could play normally. Of course, when it comes back, in my experience, it comes back very fast. I had 1 good result and then I felt top of the world, and for 6-7 months, every tournament I'd play in, I would go there expecting things to go right rather than things to go wrong. This held up for about 2 years. I would say from April 2002 till maybe the end of 2004. I had one of my longest sustained upswings. I was performing well above thing, having very, very good results. The bad results were middling, but in terms of consistency and everything, it was very nice. Chess world was going through a lot of turmoil at this point. It had been doing that for a while, but there were 2 federations. It's not really relevant to our thing, but there were 2 federations. As a result, there was no clear world championship to aim for. So I was focusing on tournaments. And then in 2007, I got a chance to play a unified world title again. So what this means is that the 2 federations had decided to reunite. And for the first time in 14 years, we had the possibility to play for the title of world champion. But this is the title of world champion as I remembered it from when I was growing up, the thing that everyone universally recognizes. This happened in Mexico, and at the start of the year, I played in a very strong tournament in Holland. And in the 2 encounters I had with my rivals for the world championship, Topolov and Kramnik, I lost to both of them in positions that had not troubled me in 4 years. So 4 years I had absolutely no problems. And then one fine day I lose 2 games in a row to these guys. So this time I remembered my experience from 2001, and I thought I should not put it off. I shouldn't say, well, at some point I will get to it. I should work on it today before this thing gets out of hand. And so I remember right after this tournament in Holland finished, there was a tournament in Mexico in 3 weeks. And I sat there for 2 weeks working on nothing else. And In Mexico, once again, I had no problems with the black pieces, which is where I had these 2 losses. And that's important, because when you plug a loss like that, then taking you an easy target for your opponents. They have to do something harder. I mean, they may still outplay you and so on, but at least they should have to work for it, was my philosophy, if you like. And later on this year, this turned out to be very useful, because I won the World Championship in Mexico City, the unified one, with mostly my performance in the black pieces. It was probably the crucial factor in my winning that tournament. So the next year I had to defend my title against Kramnik in Bonn. And this is a very interesting match where I think a lot of the lessons I learned over the years came together. So I'll share that with you in some detail. A match is different from a tournament. Ostensibly, a tournament looks like harder work. You're going to play 10 different people. Therefore, your work multiplies by 10, right? Actually, it isn't so, because in a tournament, you'll play 10 different people, but they're also playing, and every person is playing everyone else. And so your attention tends to be dispersed. The second thing is, if you have an uncomfortable opponent, you don't have to deal with them. You can maybe, that one game you make a draw, you get that uncomfortable opponent out of your way, and then you focus on the opponents that you find easier to play with, for all sorts of reasons, stylistic, the kind of openings you have. Some opponents will be more difficult at any moment than others. So you can get someone out of the way and focus on the easier points. And on top of that, any result between any 2 opponents somewhere else can affect the standings. So everything tends to be dispersed. In a match, there's no, if I don't beat someone, I can never go ahead in this match score. So that's very important. Second thing is, because it's that, because you know that you're going to play 12 games with one guy, and you're going to play 12 games with one guy, and he's going to play 12 games with you. You focus for 5 or 6 months on one person. And this means that literally you look at every game they play, and you don't just look for what they're doing and try to get some information like that. You go very, very deep. You try to see at what moment they made a mistake, at what moment they did something right. And you try to get into somebody's soul almost, psychologically. And it's a very unpleasant feeling when you realize that he's probably doing the same to you. So he's sitting there, and you can almost feel 4 guys sitting and dissecting your game and saying, but in this moment is when he cracked. So let's see why he did so and so on. I had to assemble a team for this kind of work. Generally for a match, you get 4 or 5 people together. The reason you need such a big team is because you're going to, like I said, go through all the games that your opponent will do, but you have to try and anticipate where he moves next. So obviously, if someone is going to come for me, I'm going to develop something new. If I have 4 or 5 months to do that work, it will be very sophisticated. I will be able to put in a lot of work. So in a match, you accept that you will not be able to cover everything. And guessing where your opponent is going to be turns out to be the decisive feature. If I can do something new that catches my opponent off guard completely, while being well prepared in it, then I can neutralize all those months of work, because he's done work for a completely different opponent, and vice versa. So I had 4 people. The most important thing for me was, first of all, that we should get along. So at a very simple level, we're going to spend 3 months training intensively. By training, I mean 8-9 hour days, 6 days a week, then you'll take a 1-day break, and then again 6 days a week. So that's the rough routine we kept. And so at a basic level, if we're going to have personality conflicts, this doesn't work. So that's the first thing. The second important thing is, I felt that each one of them should be very, very good at something that I'm not good at. So they should, cover some weakness of mine. I should be able to learn something from them. So people often ask, if you're the best player in the world, what does a trainer teach you? And the thing is, you may be the best at over-the-board play and over-the-board results, but that doesn't mean you're good at everything. There will always be some area. It could be the middle game, it could be the end game, it could be strategical, it could be tactical, it could be psychology, it could be anything, but there's always someone who's better at many areas than you are. So I tried to assemble people who were very good in the areas that I was weakest, and who were good in the areas that my opponent Kramnik was good at, so that, in a sense, I could fortify myself. And I took one very, very important decision, which is that I was going to switch from the opening that I played all my life. So generally, I'm a king pawn player. I move the pawn in front of the king, and that's what I'm specialized in. And that leads to different kinds of positions than a queen pawn player. Kramnik is a queen pawn player, by the way. I decided that Kramnik was going to be most threatened by someone who is a queen pawn player. And so I decided that I was going to switch. The Bond match was a particularly funny place to do it in, because I was walking into his strongest suit. He himself is a d4 player, was a d4 player all his life. And here I was saying I'm going to confront him in that. The expertise he's built up in his whole life and the expertise I was going to build up in a few months. It's roughly the comparison. It's like trying to speak a new language better than someone who's a native speaker, literally. I took that decision. The advantage, as I saw it, was the surprise value. Surprise value was huge. He wasn't really going to expect that. The second advantage was the kind of positions I get would be more favorable to me, because they're more dynamic. Kramnik is more of a static player, or at least was at that point, and I needed to change the course of the game to something that I liked. Because in the end, it's only if something feels enjoyable and feels natural that you will do it well. So in chess, it's very important to try to steer the game into what you do well. And so I took that decision. So I assembled my team roughly October 2007. And I took the decision then, and I told them I will not revisit this. So by April, if we realize that we are on a course for disaster, I will not change. I understood that I had to live with that decision no matter what, because the worst thing is that you spend 4 months working on something, you conclude that you're not really sure if it's going to work, and then you switch back to what's familiar. So you've neither done the proper work there nor here. And it was very important for me to focus all my energy on that. So that was a big risk. So I hired a team of 4 people, out of which only one I knew very well, so 3 new guys. I was changing from an opening I played all my life to something I was going to learn in a few months. And I was throwing away the ladder, so to speak. In fact, Bond turned out to be the best match that I played in my life, and probably will. I don't think I will get a result like that again. Against Kramnik and I have played something like 180 games together, and we are tied. We are tied in everything. We are tied in classical games, roughly in rapid and blitz. All our life we've been very, very close in terms of results. But here, after 6 games, I was leading by 4.5 to 1.5. So from 50%, I suddenly in this one match, it had gone to 75%. Having said that, a lot of things came my way. Not only was I doing all the right things, but Kramnik did seem to do all the wrong things at the same time. And it was perfect, and I think there's a danger of taking too much away from this lesson. But nonetheless, everything I do is informed by what I've done in Bonn. So it's very, very important to take risks. You cannot say, I'm going to just focus on what I'm good at. Because in chess, as in everything else, things get neutralized. An area that seems very promising, seems like to have a lot of possibilities, suddenly gets shut down. Somebody finds a move that nobody can improve on, and then for a few months or even years, you can't play that line. And what if you happen to be good at that? So you have to learn a mix of things that you're good at, that you're not good at, that you're comfortable with, uncomfortable with. You have to keep learning. And it was very good that in Bonn I managed to do it very well. I'm very proud that I took that risk, and clearly that's what paid off, because in the match, it was a crucial point. I think in subsequent years, I've returned to this theme of trying to keep on experimenting, doing stuff that's fun. People ask me, you must be very good at concentration. And actually, chess players are as good or bad in concentration as you are. We're very good at sitting there and staring at a board, but that's not the same. So, you could be thinking of girls, you could be thinking of movies, you could be thinking of anything. The ability to concentrate, for me, comes from doing something fascinating, something that grabs my attention. And that is why in chess it's very important to keep on finding new and interesting things to do. Because if you don't, your brain switches off. So for the brain, it's very funny. Things like fatigue and all don't work in the same way. When I'm doing something fascinating, I can go on for many hours more. But if it's boring, then it gets very tiring very fast. So in the Bond match, literally everything seemed to come together in the best way at the same time. And so this is what I've learned. It's important to have goals, because it helps you orient yourself. It's important to keep learning new things, because that's the only way you can learn to focus on something. If something is new and fascinating, and you'll need to keep on taking risks. In the Bond match, for instance, the risks I took were the ones that made the difference. But equally, in any single game, if you don't have the confidence to take risks, eventually your performance suffers. I think those are the main lessons that I wanted to share with you. I'll be happy to take some questions now if you like.
We are not going to use hand mics here. We are going to introduce a catch box. This is a mic embedded here. You can just throw the mic to the next person who is going to ask the question. As a safety instruction, don't throw it on their face, okay?
So I need to ask in this. Okay. Thank you. That was very inspiring.
Thank you.
My question is about this supercomputers and artificial intelligence. So we have all heard of cases where they have defeated grandmasters, yourself, Kasparov, and all. Do you think we can ever say that they are going to be better than human brains and always be stronger than like the best in the world?
Okay, that's in fact happened a long time ago. So roughly 97 was when they beat a reigning world champion. By 2001, it was getting hopeless. And I would say by 2003-04, it was already a surprise if a grandmaster was able to draw a match, not even win it. So if you can imagine something 13 years back, computers were strong enough to beat us consistently, and where we are now, it's not close. In fact, they've gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. Your phone will probably beat any human being alive. And soon your fridge will do it, and then your microwave will do it. It's going to get worse from here. So what has happened is actually quite interesting, is that computers have gotten so strong that one of the strongest learning tools we have now is working with them. Because in almost any position, not only the ones that you're familiar in, but the ones you're unfamiliar with, they can show you something that you didn't even realize existed. So they constantly make surprising moves, because they're examining, 600 million positions per second. And our way of thinking is just immediately see the top 3 moves, and then you check those thoroughly, and you decide which is the best of those. But there might have been a 4th move at the very beginning which is better than all these 3, but you've eliminated in the first thing. So for humans, this pruning, if you like, is very, very strong. We cut it down to 2 or 3 moves very quickly based on our judgment. And sometimes our judgment has big holes. And you do this quite emotionally. Maybe it's actually quite a systematic process, but it feels very intuitive. You have strong tastes, you have strong preferences, and you check thing. Anyway, so one of the learning methods is whenever the computer confronts you with something unfamiliar or something you didn't even realize was possible, you try to understand why. Nowadays, I would say what makes one chess player better than another is not whether he found something on his own, but whether he understood something on his own. So the focus has shifted from entirely from the work you could do to understanding the work that you did, because the computers, everyone has access to the same computer, and everyone's computer is as good as any other, is much stronger than any human being. So to give you an example, if I sat with a computer, I could use a computer to check what I was thinking, so I could analyze with it, and you could analyze with a computer, and we played a game with each other. No disrespect, but you'll probably default to just letting your computer make the moves. I would probably try to interfere once or twice and try to think. But it's hit and miss. It's not necessary that I will beat you. So it's one of the great leveling things that has happened in chess, that any young 6-year-old in an island somewhere who's sitting in this computer is able to ask questions and get answers at the same level as any top grandmaster. So the difference comes in understanding it in human terms and learning from this, because they take you in all sorts of unexpected directions, and that has made learning very easy. You never have to find anything on your own anymore. You can just, almost any move, you just make the move on the board and you see what the computer says. But then understanding what it has said has become the differentiating factor now. But there will never be a time again, I think, where we will beat them. So unless we become androids or something, so that's just not going to happen.
Sir.
Yeah.
Hello. It's great to have you here. Just would like to know, during your journey, you would have seen up and downs. So during downs, so what is that emotional feelings you have faced, or how it has helped you to achieve back to the things?
I described a couple of moments, the post my grandmaster title and perhaps Dortmund in 2001, which I mentioned, the worst result of my career. It knocks you out for a while, there's no question. I mean, a particularly bad result will take away your confidence, and it'll take you some time. So the first thing is, I think even though the urge is to work and do something, is to realize that it's more important to get away from it. So the most important thing is to maybe spend a couple of weeks where you do something else, some hobby, something, which is a good excuse to have a hobby, by the way. If you have something else which can engage your energy, you tend not to go back to what you do. And then I find that usually losses are when you clear away a lot of your bad ideas. I'm able to make a lot more changes after a loss than otherwise, because when things are going well, you always feel, if I can tweak this, I tweak that, maybe I can get better results from learning something new. There's some logic to that, because what you've already built up a lot of expertise in, if you can keep that going, you might score more points for a while. But long term, you'll have to learn something new anyway, because as I mentioned, areas get shut down, other areas get opened up. Where you can make a difference will keep changing. So I find it easier to do new things and, let's say, the courage to experiment after a bad defeat. After a minor defeat, you're disappointed and you will make some changes, but a major one allows you to clear stuff and opens new areas in a much better way. The danger when you win is that everything is much harder. It's nice, of course. Your confidence is good, and it can also lead to good things, but you have to, I think, make a conscious effort to change things anyway. Because if you're not constantly moving, then at some point it'll be too late to move. And that's roughly why I think defeats are much more useful. Yeah.
Players you have faced in your life, who was the most daunting psychologically? I mean, who would send shivers into you, or you would be least interested to play against him?
I mean, in a chess sense, the most scary thing is to play a computer. I mean, it's really embarrassing how even the stuff you do very well and you think you know this inside out, it will find some way to irritate you. Otherwise, I think roughly the same 4 or 5 characters. I mean, Kasparov, Kramnik, Topolov, Carlson, maybe Karpov before that. Not necessarily sequentially or all in the same time, but roughly these are the people that you had the longest. And also because they're the people I played the most games with. So that's also a factor.
Hello, you can hear me?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. I read in one article when there was there's something happened in Europe, all the flights were disrupted. And you had to move in a, what do you call that, that big van?
A van, yeah.
And your wife managed everything, managing the whole team, getting the van. It was impossible to get a van and all that. And I would like to compliment that, what she did at that time. I think any project manager would be proud of to do that. It was a very successful endeavor she did to make you reach from that point to
I think that's right, yeah.
the tournament. So it's a request that next time maybe your wife can also give a talk about how she managed it. That's one. Second thing I read was about you was that you like the Terminator series. So for someone who's so intelligent to like the Terminator series, I really liked it because I like it. So I wanted to ask you, what are your hobbies, number one? Number two, what are the movies that you like now? Because Terminator, for you liking Terminator, I was very amazed that you like the whole Terminator series and you watch it again and again.
Okay, so, let's go in order. So, yes, one of the arrangements we came to very soon after we were married was that my wife would start dealing with everything not related to chess, and I would just focus on the chess. We got there slowly. I mean, so when we got married, I was responding to all my emails, booking tickets, all these things. And then, over time it evolved that slowly she took more and more. Can't say I enjoyed every moment of that transition, but over time I realized she's just very good at it, and she would also take care of everything in such a way that I didn't have to think about it at all, which is a freedom, because then I'm allowed to almost lose myself completely in chess. So certainly she's been a very big part of my career. I think she'll be pleasantly surprised to see herself as a project manager, but you're right. That is what it is. That experience in Sofia was very nice because we had this situation where this volcano had erupted, and therefore all flights across Europe were cancelled. And so I was trying to go from Frankfurt to Sofia in Bulgaria, but there was no way to do it. And we waited 2 days to see if something would improve and change. But then we had to take a decision because we had to move. And so she arranged a van and some drivers who had agreed to take us there. And so me and my 5 team members, it had to be big enough for all of us. And I think it was easier for her to take this decision because she's much more practical. I'm the kind of person who will say, but if the weather improves tomorrow, the flight will overtake the bus. But this is not very helpful because there comes a point when you actually have to take a decision. You can't keep postponing it. In fact, for that bus ride, we watched all the extended version of The Lord of the Rings, all 3 once. So that's another good movie. With the Terminator, it's quite funny that I watched it for the first time in the World Junior. This is by accident. I just put on the TV and they had that movie. I started watching it. And then I won that World Junior Championship. So I thought, nice. Then 3 years later, I was playing the qualification event for the World Championship. And again, by accident, on a day when I was in a middle position. I needed to get into the top 16. But I was in position 26 or something, and I needed to win a game. So of course, I was working hard. I watched TV. So I put on the TV, and completely by accident, this movie came on again. And so the next day I won, and then the day after that I won, and so it started to feel like a lucky charm. It happened 2 more times. In the Karpov match, the only game I won was right after the movie. And again, so it became a sort of lucky charm for me. Of course, I'm almost nostalgic for the days when you could prepare for a chess game by watching a movie. Nowadays, with so much computer analysis, you don't indulge yourself like that. What was your third question? Hobby, yeah. So my hobby, a fair amount of movies. I watch a lot of documentaries and things like that. That's one of the nice things these days. You get documentaries on almost any subject you're curious about. You can find something interesting to watch. But something that just allows you to disconnect completely. I like astronomy as well. So whenever I have a chance, I try to go out and get some viewing in, or I have access to a couple of remote telescopes. So basically how this works is there's a telescope in Spain, in New Mexico, and there's one in Australia. And you can log on the internet, set up, select your target and how long you want the exposure to be and what filters you want to use, things like that. You do all that, you can set it for a week from now, a month from now, whatever you want. In fact, you have to do it because if the other guys are also booking, and so you do that, and you get some very nice images, things like that.
We have time for one more question.
Okay,
I think there's a gentleman right at the back who's raised his hand. Yeah,
This
sorry.
is Bala.
I'm sure all of you have a lot of questions to ask Mr. Anand. There is a tea break that is following right after, so you can please utilize your time to talk to him personally.
Hello,
so the gentleman
Anand.
right at the back, navy blue
yeah.
shirt. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Anand, this is Bala, work for Mahindra. I have a question that we all a project manager, we need to have a strong brain to remember everything, because everything, when bosses ask, we need to have things in fingertip. Have you done any special care to improve your brain power, or is it a God gift like Albert Einstein had a special brain which had a bridge between right brain and left brain?
I mean, I certainly feel that I have some natural aptitude towards chess. I mean, something about the game, the way it's structured, the way the rules are, brings out something to me. I can't explain this, but it's clear that chess came very naturally to me, in the sense that I could feel myself improving very fast in chess in a way that I do not do in other subjects. And so that's one thing. But, I mean, a couple of points I mentioned. What I like, even in chess, I have very strong likes and dislikes. The positions I like playing, the kind of things I'm good at, come naturally to me, and it's concentration, memory, everything comes naturally. So I have no trouble recalling what I need. I have no trouble focusing on something for hours on end. But the things that I don't like doing, then it's a struggle. I mean, you can concentrate for 2 minutes and then your mind wanders again, then you bring it back, then it wanders again. And so the same things which is so easy in what you remember, it's very hard in that. So I would say that the thing is to find a way to make everything interesting. The things I find boring, you try to make some sort of challenge that even if it doesn't become interesting or fascinating, at least it's less boring. Because that's where what you enjoy doing, you'll have no difficulty focusing on and bringing your full brain power to bear. I think that's the conclusion I've reached. I'll give you one funny story about how your brain always sees things that you think about the most. So once, when we were newly married, my wife told me, I've put everything in, I've put your stuff in the safe. The password is easy to remember, it's 2706. So I told her, I thought for a second, I said, actually, ELO ratings, your chess ratings, you can't have 2706 anymore. So they're rounded off to 5 or 10. And therefore, it's not a very easy number to remember. And she said, well, it's our anniversary. So, But it's typical that you think of the thing that's closest to you. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vishwanathan Anand, for your wonderful life story. Clearly, your achievements did not come easy. We can easily translate your experiences to our work lives as well. Work towards a goal, be passionate, be persistent, be tactical, be innovative. Clearly, Mr. Anand achieved his dream. I'm sure we can as well. We are thrilled you joined us today.
As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present you a memento and a spot photograph of the event. May we request Mr. B.G. Jayaraman, Region Mentor, Region 11 Western Asia, PMI, to do the honor.